Welcome to the Design Build Institute of America's Design Build Delivers podcast. I'm Kim Wright at DBIA's national headquarters. Make no mistake about it, DBIA's Design Build Award winners represent the best of the best in the design build industry. Each year, DBIA National Award winners show us just how far a truly collaborative team can go in delivering not only the most time and cost-efficient projects, but also triple bottom-line impacts for our communities and environment. DBIA Project Award winners are diverse, big, small, horizontal, vertical, and from every corner of our world. So what makes the difference between a good design build project and a great design build project? Today, longtime awards jury chair Barbara Jackson tells us what a DBIA Design Build Award winner looks like. Before we get started, DBIA offers our special thanks to US CAD for partnering with us to bring you this year's episodes of Design Build Delivers. Thank you, Barbara, for joining us today. You know, we've got a lot to talk about the projects that compete each year in DBIA's awards program, and we're going to dig into that, some do's and some don'ts. But, you know, mostly I want to start off with, for our listeners, to kind of give them a little peek behind the curtain to hear what it's like to be an awards juror. I know, having sat in on these jury deliberations, that a lot of the jurors have been here for a very long time, and they consider this task, duty. It's a lot of work, but they still really enjoy it. Tell us a little bit about what it's like serving on a DBIA juror, and why is it so fulfilling for you?
Yeah, so I've had the privilege of being involved with this process for many years, and I've served as the chair of the committee for many years. But I'll tell you, the thing about it is this is one that we all look forward to. It's always consistent. The judging always takes place in the summer. It is time consuming, and it's become more and more time consuming because we really have gone deeper and deeper. And this is not something, we take it all so seriously. We really do. So we'll get the various submissions, and there's many, there's 65 to probably up to 80, 85 in any given year. And that takes a long time. We actually review before we even get to DC, Washington, DC, at the office. And then we're there at the office for 2 full days. And I have to tell you, though, what it's like to be a juror. It's a responsibility. We really take it. I want to stress how seriously we take this. This is not some automatic, just go through the motions kind of thing. We spend 2 days debating and considering and looking at these projects from multiple angles, each question, the depth of understanding on the submitter's part as well. Does it come through that they understand, and all the best practices and a number of other things. But it's exciting. We look forward to it. It's hard work. It takes a long time. But when we're all done, Kim, there's such a satisfaction. And there's such, how do I want to say? We've seen the best of the best. We have seen the best of the best. And it's exhilarating. I mean, there's something in that that's really satisfying. And each year, why people want to keep serving year after year after year, because we've seen this elevation of excellence. Not just in the submission, like somebody knows how to put together a submission. We mean in the project and the project engagements and the project outcomes. That's what's excelling and elevating year after year after year. So it's fun. It's work. It can be exhausting
and heated. You guys get into it. I mean, because
we
it's
do.
like everybody has to understand why someone feels the way they do so strongly about a project or another.
Yeah, and what's really interesting, Kim, is these are projects that the juror, if you have any association with the project, you've got to sit out on being a reviewer for that project. So you got to understand, these are people who don't know the team. They don't necessarily know much or anything other than the name of the project and where it's located and what the submitter has told us. So you've got individuals who are unfamiliar making the case for your project and your team and your process and your design. So that's an external voice for what you've done as a team and a client and an owner. And, you know, that's pretty extraordinary. So sure, we get heated in there sometimes to make the case. We got to make our case for this project and what we see. And there's nuances. It's the nuances that are just so rich. And so, yeah, but it's so satisfying and it's not, and we still listen deeply. That I want to make sure everybody understands that if someone else is countering my case, I'm listening deeply for what it is they see that I can't see. That's what design build collaboration looks like. It looks like making a case, making a pitch, but then listening to learn from the other people. They'll either have points that I can counterpoint or I can't, and I'm beginning to see their viewpoint, but it's an engagement.
And this group is diverse too. These jurors are coming from different sectors, different disciplines, different regions.
Yes, very good point. And, you know, different size companies. We've got all the disciplines involved. We've got owner representation. We've got architects, engineers, contractors, specialty contractors. We've got, you know, government or public representation. We've got private company representation. We've got a great mix. We've got, you know, just a great mix, different levels and companies, and it's a great group. It's so satisfying. That's why nobody wants to get off. I mean, literally for over a decade, for me, I don't know, it's probably almost close to, I don't know, 15 years? I don't know, 18 years, a long time.
For a lot of work too, because you did mention that. And these packets, you know, for those who have submitted an award, it's involved because the jurors need to see everything that we can possibly see about this project. So, and then like you said, you've got to go through 80-ish of those every year. So it's definitely a lot. But one thing too is you've talked about a little bit the evolution that we've seen. You know, I can't think of how many times I've heard in the jury room, did you see that? Did you see what they did about this? Did you see how they handled that teaming? Did you, you know, it's the evolution among the projects submissions has been incredible over the years.
Yeah, and that's the thing, especially I'm going to say over the last probably 5 to 8 years, we've really seen like the curve has, you know, it was a slight incline, and then it just exponentially started to go up in terms of it's so obvious the deep understanding of the nuances associated with design build done right. So when we say that they're elevating in quality, they're elevating in execution quality, in procurement quality, in teaming quality, in design quality, all of those aspects, the nuances that make design build done right work, and an explanation of it is what we see. And here's another thing that's really fun and just exciting is that in any given year, we could see something like an approach or a level of engagement that we've never seen before. In other words, they start with the design build done right best practices, and then they elevate from there. I mean, just to get on the map, you've got to have the design build done right best practices just to be in the game. Okay, we'll make that clear. That's what we're looking for, bottom line. And then it's the nuances or the approaches to those aspects, the nuances associated with various approaches to the design build done right strategies and tactics and just practices. Those nuances, sometimes we'll see things that we've just never seen before. And that's how we learn. That's how we begin to elevate what we want to look at over the years. And those are pretty doggone exciting. It's just, oh my goodness, how they engage the client as part of the entire process, or how they did their preemptive work prior to going right off to design, how they got together, how they engaged, who they interviewed, who they talked to, how they visited the clients, how they visited the neighborhoods, how they got the community involved in the project. So they take the design build done right best practices as foundational, and then they just expand from there. And that's what we mean when we see an elevation. And what it is, I'll be honest with you, it is a big piece of this is the leadership of the team and the leadership of the project overall, and who's involved in the leadership for the client, who's involved with the leadership of the design build team, and how they engage together. A lot of these advanced nuances are coming in those engagements, just as you would want on the highest performing teaming arrangements that you can get to deliver the most optimized solutions and address some of the biggest challenges we've ever seen. I mean, through COVID, we saw a tremendous challenge on projects, and yet how they handled that was extraordinary.
And it seems to me too that what you're talking about is collaboration on steroids. It's not design build done right light. You can't throw in the word collaboration 50 times in the award entry, but then not be able to demonstrate true high level team collaboration.
If you're just telling us what you did that's not enough. If you say, well, we met weekly and collaborated on a regular basis. Well, thank you for sharing, but so what?
Yeah.
And this is what we want in these submissions. We want the so what. We want what you did, but we want to know how you did it and what difference it made. What was the impact? What was the influence? What was the outcome because of some step or approach that you utilized? So we got to get beyond this is what we did. The questionnaire itself has some straightforward objective questions, yes or no. Those are sort of what we call the check gate. Okay, if it's yeses where it needs to be yeses or no's where it needs to be no's, then okay, you're in the door. And then everything after that, though, really has to be telling us the how and the why.
Are you interested in sustainable design and construction practices but concerned about profitability? USCAD, a N0 company, helps forward-thinking ENR top-ranked AEC firms mitigate risk and drive profit through digitalization using Autodesk AEC technology. To learn more, contact uscad.com/DBIA for a free 30-minute consultation. That's uscad.com/DBIA. You talked about the evolution that we've seen on projects and teams, and it's forced the DBIA awards program and jurors to evolve as well. I mean, we've added a lot of awards in recent years to accommodate all of the things that jurors were seeing that we didn't necessarily have a way to acknowledge because it didn't fit into an existing category. I think that the Chairs Award is one that comes to mind. There were others certainly too.
Yeah. Well, one of them, for example, I mean, I remember meeting the whole group met in Denver to start to talk about what we mean by design excellence, for example. And then we had discussions around design excellence in architecture and design excellence in engineering, because they're not necessarily the same thing. And how we look at these projects, it got harder and harder to just put it all in a simple little box. The box became more complex as the process became more complex, or let me say it this way, the understanding of the complexity of the process became better known. That's when we started to see the nuances ourselves. And so, I remember those conversations on better defining design excellence, for example. Then we started seeing it started with just BIM and the utilization of BIM. Well, that's a no-brainer today. So now it's, virtual design and construction. And you better be telling us about more than just BIM, because there are some projects that are still small projects, and the level of virtual design and construction techniques or applications that they might use may be much simpler things, but they're still applicable to virtual design and construction, how they engage with one another, how they communicate with one another, how they communicate design, how they do a number of things. But it's no longer just BIM, building information modeling. It's beyond that. Are you using some applicants will tell us about their use of drones and how they use that. But again, that's not the answer we're looking for. Is we use drones. We use drones, and this is why, and this is the difference it made. It may have to do with safety. It may have to do with access. It may have to do with deeper knowledge and understanding. It may have to do with saving time and money, which goes back to the triple bottom line economic performance of the project, not just for the team, but also for the client. So there's so many ways to talk about that one, virtual design and construction. But where it started, Kim, was, are you using BIM, and tell us how you're using it? So now it's way beyond it. So when we talk about an elevation, that's what I mean, the nuances and it's really about how we're using technology. So that was one of the new ones. And small projects is another one that we've picked up on, because, I know there's been some concern that if you weren't a large project, then you probably, the thought was, well, then why should we submit anything? Because only the large projects win. Well, number one, that's not the case, but we did decide that we want to recognize small projects as a category, because we've had some extraordinary design build done right on smaller projects.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about heated deliberations. You've got a massive project that's extraordinary, design build done right, and you've got a small project that's design build done right extraordinarily. And what do? So that's when we said, look, we can't ignore this that we're seeing. It doesn't matter the size of your company, the size of your project. Complexity does have some things to do with it. There are very small projects that are extremely complex. There are very large projects that are extremely simple.
Right.
However, what we're trying to say is design build done right is design build done right. It's not the project that gives design build done right. It's the teaming and the process you employ that gives design build done right. So we just wanted to make sure we could recognize that, regardless of the size of the company, the size of the project. And we wanted to make sure we could recognize the best of design build done right. And that small projects category now allows us to do that.
Well, and the judging has also gotten so far beyond just, what in the olden days was just price and schedule, right? Design build was very, very proud of our ability to deliver on time and on budget, et cetera. But now that, like you have said before, that's almost just the expectation. That's where you start. But now tell us about your triple bottom line, tell us about community impact, tell us about, and that happens in projects of all sizes too. I mean, that triple bottom line has become an expectation for an award-winning project, correct?
Yes. And again, you've got to be able to tell us about that. But what we mean by triple bottom line is really a business expression, but it applies to any kind of project and any kind of capital improvement. And so what we're talking about is economic performance, social performance, and environmental performance. And this is sometimes, again, this is every project, in my view, this is my view, especially in design build, every project should be viewed through a triple bottom line perspective. And the team and the client both should be able to speak of the project from triple bottom line performance. So the economic performance, the owner has, meeting budgets and those sorts of things. And the design build team, of course, needs to be profitable in the process and all of that. So there's economic performance there, obviously, but there's also economic performance associated with the impact that investment is going to have on the social. So what does that mean? That means the community. And again, we'll have some submitters tell us that, well, it provided jobs for the community. Well, again, thank you for sharing, but so what? Tell us the rest of the story. And what did that mean? And how did that manifest? And what was the outcomes for that? And tell us something about what the economic condition, what the economic job-wise condition was before this project provided jobs and after. But what we're also looking for is what the impact is of the project itself to the community and those who had nothing to do with the development or the creation of the project. So when you build a new bridge, that has an impact on everybody using that bridge, every single person using that bridge. So what does it mean? Do they get home? Do they get home earlier from their jobs? And so there's an impact, social impact. But that's not the end of the story, Kim. What does it mean when you can get home earlier? Well, it means that I can now watch my son's soccer games and I don't miss them. Well, you tell me, is that an impact?
Sure.
This is what drives me nuts when people say it's just construction or it's just design build. Are you kidding me? That bridge has caused some impact in that community. What is it? Tell us about that. That's the social. And then the environmental, again, we often can hit and talk about easily the economic, and we can easily talk about the environmental anymore. It's become a big thing. Sustainability, environmental, energy consumption, all of those things. The one that's been missing, in my view, is the social, the community impact. And even when, again, even there, we need to hear the what's so about it, not just what happened. We created jobs. Thank you for sharing. And again, just a tip for anybody listening, you want to go into your presentations to win your design build project with a client, you better come at it from a triple bottom line perspective. Not just tell them what you did, but why you did it and what the impact is. You start doing that on a regular basis, and people are going to hear you differently. It's not just the facts. There used to be, what was it, Joe Friday, 100 years ago. And it was just the facts, ma'am.
You're
just
dating us, Barbara.
I know. But I bet you there'll be a few people who know what we're doing.
That's true.
Not just the facts. It's the facts and the story. The facts and the story. We need it both.
And that gets to, obviously, if there's an owner out there who decided this project is necessary, it's probably coming from a community perspective. It makes me wonder then too, how important are the owner's letters in these types of, when you're doing an award entry? We started that many years ago, several years ago. I don't remember exactly when, but it's been a number of years that the owner's letter has been a part of the process. And it's a very, very important part, because what we want to see in that is we want to see that, number one, the owner understands the design build process themselves. In other words, when they start to say why they used it, they actually are, again, getting into the nuances. It's not just,
at minimum, again, we kind of want to see that, it's a faster process, high quality, design can be expected, and often a dollar savings or reinvested saved dollars, meaning we saved money and we're able to reinvest it into the project and get more value for the dollars that we spend. We want them to understand that. But then we want to hear also the impacts of a design build teaming arrangement and the impacts of high collaboration, open communication, transparency. We want to also hear about what their expectations were, what it meant when it was all said and done, what that new health clinic meant to the community, what that new bridge meant to people's lives on a daily basis, what that new manufacturing facility meant to the community in terms of not just jobs, but how it blends so beautifully into the neighborhood and has become a part of our environment, and in this blended mixed environment, and anything that they can share like that. But it's a critical component because, again, if a design build team is going to come in and tell us we did all the best practices right, but then the owner doesn't have any experience of the impact using design build made for them, then that's telling us something's missing in the communication. Something's missing. Kim, what it is what has been your level of engagement with the owner? What has been the level of engagement? And this all comes to, and I know we're going to talk at the end here about a webinar that we're going to be doing about the whole awards process and what that looks like. We'll talk more about this, but we're going to see more and more elevation of that engagement between client and design build team. I mean, we that's what we're pushing for and wanting. And we're going to talk about how you can actually achieve that.
When we can do that now. We're going to get together in April, a webinar, and we're going to be just sharing all the how-tos. Emily Egan, the awards program coordinator, is going to join Barbara, and we're really going to walk people through the process, which has got to be helpful, fill in some of those gaps, right?
Yeah, and again, Kim, it's kind of like we've talked about the best. We always talk about design build done right best practices, but there's a mentality that goes along with that. It's not just the technical stuff, right? An RFQ and an RFP and all of that. It's not just the technical stuff associated with best practices. It's also the engagement levels of the best practices, and all of the ways in that we can approach clients, engage the client, make sure there's open, transparent communication, all of those sorts of things. We want to take now and talk about making that mental investment in design build done right, and a leadership investment in design build done right. All of these things is part of the elevation of the entire process. And for someone who's been involved in this for 23 years, since 2000, not in the jury, but in design build and DBIA, the impact that DBIA done right practice is having on the entire project delivery process for society, for our clients, for the built environment, is so significant, the impact it's had. I can't even tell you. If you've been in it for 23 years, you can see it so clearly. I mean, I'm telling you, back then it simply was, schedule, budget, and quality. And that was the end of the story.
Yeah.
And that was it. And now it's so elevated, but it's elevating the entire industry. And I'm not sure if we ourselves even recognize the impact that DBI has had on how this business is done. But boy, has it had an impact.
If you had one parting piece of advice for someone who's thinking, we had a terrific project, we really want to enter it, maybe they're on the fence, what's an advice for a potential award entrant on what it takes to actually be an award winner?
The one takeaway, or the one thing I want to share, is that, you know, it's about a great submission is not just about telling us what you did. That might be a good submission, but it's not a great submission. You've got to tell us how you did it and why you did it. And the why has got to be there. The impacts that it had, the difference it made, all of those things. So it's design build done right. Tell us, you know, what you did, but then you've got to tell us the impacts. And that often that's the difference between a good submission and a great submission. And the other thing I want to say is that you also want to make sure you do the prep work before the submission, meaning go interview the people who are involved in the project, whoever's pulling it all together. You've got to have straight from the horse's mouth. You've got, and I say, not an email. Go talk to them. Go do an interview. Bring 6 of them together in a room. Tell them, ask them what they did, why they did it, and just those 3 questions, and what the impact was. What difference did it make? And what difference did it make to the team? What difference did it make to the client? What difference did it make to the community? If you do the work, the pre-work to the submission, and get everybody you can get involved from all the disciplines plus the client, and an end user or two wouldn't hurt. Get them together and do that kind of a debrief, and you're on your way to an absolute, not just winning submission, but knock it out of the park submission. And lately, Kim, we've been seeing some knock it out of the park submissions.
Yeah.
So if one team can do that, another team can do that.
Well, award season is kind of my favorite time of the year too. It's exciting to see the things that are going to come in. It's open. We're taking them. We'll have our webinar in April, and then Barbara and her crew will get together in the summer and start doing the hard work. So thank you, Barbara, so much. It's really great. I think it's important to let people get a little inside look of what it's all about. I mean, I think if you haven't done it or you haven't been in an awards program, it all seems a bit mysterious, but it's actually, it's one of DBIA's most fun programs for sure.
Yes, and it's a great way to debrief any project, is just to take a look at all of these factors of what had it work, what didn't work, what's been the impact of it all, what difference did it make? And you should be doing that, in my view, with every project you do. And that's kind of what the awards process allows you, in a sort of a systematic way, to kind of go through all of those questions about what just happened. You know, we've just spent a year and a half, 2 years. What just happened versus, on to the next one. So it's kind of nice that you can take that time. So maybe some folks will begin thinking of it that way and use the awards program and process as a way to just debrief every project they do.
Good thought for sure. And we're going to see you next month, and we'll dig into some nitty gritty for folks who want to get some details. So thank you again so much. Really appreciate it.
Very good. It's always a pleasure, and I look forward to seeing some great submissions again this year.
So now's the time to get started on your DBIA awards entry, if you haven't already. The deadline is May 24th, and you can access a variety of helpful resources on our website. You should also plan to join us April 19th at 2 p.m. Eastern for our how-to session on submitting an award. Both resources and webinar registration can be found at dbia.org/awards. Thanks again to Barbara for lifting the curtain a bit to give us a behind-the-scenes view of DBIA National's Project and Team Awards program. And thank you to USCAD for their support of our Design Build Delivers podcast. Find out more at uscad.com/DBIA.